Welcome back to the channel, guys. Today is a special episode because it is the first day back on the water. It's been a long time coming. We finally got a boat back from Asia and we are ready to do some fishing, and we got nothing but on the water videos coming to you the rest of the season. Hopefully this season will be longer than others because I'm getting a house built and I'll finally have a garage, which means I can store my boat inside and I can take it out whenever I want. So when we have those nice days in December, I can get out and still film on the water videos. Unfortunately, this lake that I'm fishing is usually like a Damiki rig live scope type lake. It's very clear water, but as you can see, it is not clear at all. There's tons of this algae here. It is filthy. I've never seen this lake this dirty ever in my life. Of course, the week that we finally get the boat and get to go fishing, torrential downpours literally every single day, and we get record levels of rain and everything in Pennsylvania floods. So that's going to put us up against a little bit of a challenge today, but that means we get to do one of my favorite ways to catch springtime bass, and that is on a jig. So today we're going to talk about 3 tips to help you catch more fish this spring on a jig. Some stuff that I've learned over the years. I know that these fish will start to get up in this cover and you'll be able to catch them on a jig. You might not catch a ton of fish, but usually the ones you catch will be big and they're very predictable, especially on a warm sunny day like this. It's been 30 degrees all week. All of a sudden it's about 60 today, or it'll get up to 60, and we have bright blue skies beating down on the bank, which means the warmest water is going to be up there eventually today. We have 51-degree water temperature, which is actually fairly warm for this time of year in the spring, especially after all the rain we've had. But as it gets warmer throughout the day even, and that sun beats down on the bank, the thing that happens, which we're going to talk about all throughout today's video, that water gets warmer because it is dark and there we go, we got one already. It's a big one too. Look at that. First fish of the year. We're going to talk all about little tricks on how to do exactly what I just did right there. And knowing that that was my 3rd cast of the year, today might be a special day. We'll see. Like I said, I've learned over the years when it gets hot, sunny, warm, and that dark water with that muddy water up there, especially when you have logs combined with it, equals some big bass up there. So we're going to talk all about it. Stay tuned. We'll get right into it. That was not planned at all. I was just fishing and I happened to catch one, so that was pretty sweet. Look at that guy. First one of the year. I'm so happy to be back on the water, and I'm sure you guys probably are too. I've been missing being out here and filming on the water content. As much as I love filming videos in general, something special about just being out here and filming and teaching different things on the water. And it's not as boring as filming indoor videos. All right, so now that I just accidentally had the sickest intro ever, completely unplanned, that fish hit that jig so hard. That was sweet. I love a jig bite more than anything on this earth. As much as I wanted to come out here and do some live scope fishing today and try and play around with the Damiki rig and learn how to use my new Garmin unit up here, I can't beat that bite. That is one of my favorite bites of all time. I grew up doing that ever since I was a kid, just going out before I even had electronics, fishing dirty water in the springtime with a jig and catching big bass like that. One of the big things with fishing for bass with a jig this time of year is having the right setup. And there's a few things that go into that. So that's going to be tip number 1, is making sure you have the right setup. It doesn't have to be the exact one that I'm going to use. I will mention the gear that I use because I do work with some companies and it helps me out if you support me by purchasing any of their products. Like if you want to purchase any of the 6th Sense ones we're going to use today, if you use my code Quince, you'll save 10% off your order. And then it helps me out as well to keep making videos for you. But I'm going to be using the 6th Sense hybrid jig today. I've really enjoyed using this jig. I've done a few videos on it recently on what makes it special and why I like it so much. It just comes through cover really, really well. But I'm using a 1/2 ounce today because I want to keep this thing on the bottom, and that'll come in tip number 2 and 3. We'll talk about why I'm using such a heavy jig. It's not because I want a reaction bite out of the fish. It's because I want to keep this thing down where the fish are. They're not going to want to chase baits flying through the water column real quick. If you're patient and you want to use the 3/8 ounce, definitely could get away with it, and you'll probably catch a couple more fish because of that slower fall in the springtime. But with that water being up in the 50s already, I'm good with the 1/2 ounce. I usually use the 1/2 ounce all spring so I can drag it really slow on the bottom, especially on these deeper banks. Like, I'm out in somewhere between 8 and 12 foot depending on where I'm at out here. So these logs can be pretty deep. While they might be shallow up there, they drop off pretty quick. So I want my bait, I don't want to feel like my bait is touching the bottom when really it's not, because my jig isn't heavy enough. Also means you gotta have a really good rod for 2 reasons. So the one reason that I like to have this rod is to be able to feel what my jig is doing. Like we just talked about, you wanna make sure it's on the bottom at all times. And a lot of times I'll watch my line to make sure of that as well. But I also need this rod to be able to get a good hook set. So 1, to get that hook set through the weed guard and into the fish's mouth. And then 2, to get a strong enough backbone to pull that fish out of that cover and get it coming towards you quick. So while this lake is flooded and has some flooded cover that these fish are gonna be in, it's not too high right now, but I will be flipping into some of these very heavy logs and laydowns. So I want to have heavy bait or heavy rod, heavy line to get them out as quick as possible. That one was a 3-pounder, but I've caught fish up to 6 pounds out of this lake, and probably there's some even bigger than that. So you got to have a rod that can get those fish out before they get you in there and you lose them. So this is the 7.3 heavy flipping rod from Cashin. You don't have to have this rod, but have something with some backbone. I like a heavy action this time of year. Usually I'm fishing a jig on, you can fish it on like a 7.3 medium heavy, but I prefer heavy action, especially when I know I'm flipping the jig, when I'm really dedicated, putting it in cover and trying to yank fish out. I want the heavy action. That's gonna get me the best success rate of landing these fish. So that's the rod we're gonna be going with. And then the reel is my Corrado MGL I always fish. 7 gear ratio, so I have fast speed to get those fish out as well. And I got 20-pound test fluorocarbon on it. I'm literally winching on these fish. When I set the hook, I want them coming towards me, and that's that. So let's get to fishing and see what else we can find today. So my next 2 tips for fishing a jig here, they're gonna kind of go hand in hand. This is probably the most important key to fishing a jig this time of year. While your equipment is very important, making sure you have the right gear, it's all about how and where you fish this bait. The difference between people catching fish and not catching fish 100% falls on how and where you fish this bait this time of year. There's 2 things. One is making the right casts in the right area, and the other is fishing your bait properly. So we're gonna start with talking about how to know you're in the right area, how to cast in the right places, all that kind of stuff. You can notice in front of me here, I have tons of wood, and that's probably the biggest thing. This is like a channel swing bank, so the bank kind of runs up against here. As it gets to that point out there, it'll cut back out and then cut back in and then cut back out. I want to stay on that channel swing because that's where those first fish are going to move up, especially the big females. It gives them a place that if they don't feel comfortable, they can literally just slide right off the bank and be back in deep water. So I try to fish those channel swing banks to make sure I'm fishing effective areas where those fish are. And then the next thing I'm gonna look for, especially when the water's muddy like this, is those logs. That's gonna be probably the biggest thing. Those fish will get up on those logs when the sun is beating down on them, and they will hang tight to them because they know they're safe. So 1, when the water's very dirty like this, they can't see very well. So 1, you have to get the bait right in front of them, and 2, they're gonna sit right next to those logs because it gives them a sense of security rather than like when I usually live scope out on this lake, they'll just kind of roam around out here. They don't do that when this water gets dirty because they can't see where they're going. So they'll literally hang as tight to a log as they can. And that means your cast is gonna have to be as tight to that log as it can get as well. You literally wanna put this bait right on their nose. The other thing these logs do is provide heat when that sun's beating down on them so they can feel comfortable, but also since the water is kind of cold, they can get up there and that'll absorb heat and put it into the water column for them to absorb as well. So they'll sit right up on it. It's probably one of my favorite ways to fish in the springtime. It makes them so predictable. You can find any piece of wood, and as long as it has the sun beating down on it and has some deep water underneath of it, there's a good chance there's going to be a fish there. It's very easy to pick apart where these fish are going to be in the spring. I can go around this entire lake, and if I have some depth on the wood and it's got the sun beating on it, there's a good chance I feel confident that there'll be a fish there. So I'll be able to fish slower, which is the next part of information here, making sure you fish this jig really slow. You do not want to fish this jig fast at all this time of year. A lot of times in the summer I'll hop this jig and stuff like that. I do not even move it at all that much this time of year. You can see I'm moving it a lot with the reel. I'm just picking my slack up. Basically, I pitch it in there, I let it fall right in front of that fish's face, if there is a fish there. I'll lift up to see if one grabbed it on the fall. If not, I'm literally just gonna pull my slack out of the line and feel it crawl over each one of those laydowns down there. And that's the most important part, is just keeping it in there nice and slow, especially when the water's dirty. If you drag it really slow like that, that fish could be in any one of those little laydowns hiding up against the log. So if you miss or you reel it too fast, they might not see it. But if you drag it really slow and go over every one of those logs, if it falls in front of a fish's face, they're probably gonna grab it like that one did there. I was just slowly dragging it, and I dragged it over a log, and as soon as it fell into place, he just ate it immediately. It was probably a reaction bite more than anything else. Not saying they won't eat this because they're hungry, but a lot of times I get more on a reaction bite just because I'm being very thorough and I'm putting it in the place where those fish live and dragging it through every little log down there, where eventually I'm going to come across the fish that's in that brush pile or wood or wherever they might be. So we'll keep working our way down through this bank really, really slowly, dragging our jig as slow as we can through every one of these pieces of wood. See if we can get us another one. There it is. That's a big one. That's a big one. Come here, buddy. And that is why you fish that jig nice and slow. We're just dragging it down there in place, fishing real slow to get him to bite, and that's a tubby one there. He's so light from how dirty the water is. So I hope you guys enjoyed the first on the water video back in action here, catching some fish. I hope you learned a few things about how to fish a jig in the springtime to catch fish just like this. If you did and you want to see why I like that jig so much, check this video out right here. Hit the subscribe button down below because there's plenty more on the water videos coming very soon. We're gonna let her go and get back to filming some other videos.